Hello and welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Michael Jacobi, the show in which we feature what makes Los Gatos so very special, and we're going big time today. I'm delighted to have an old friend, Tomi Ryba, who's CEO and president of Los Gatos Hospital. How are you, my friend?
Pleasure, good to see you.
Let's
Thanks
see.
for having me.
I'm famous for never having notes, but wait a minute,
Okay.
I have one here.
Oh, you cheated.
No, I cheated because, and you'll notice everything on here is a picture of you.
Oh, no.
Let me look at this.
You have a
All right,
reminder of who
all
I
right,
am?
this is you. Okay, so we're okay on that.
You're in the right place.
That having
Okay.
been said,
Yeah.
let's open with a question. We talked about this when you visited my radio show. What does the community mean to the hospital, and vice versa? What does the community? What does the hospital mean to the community?
Mm-hmm. So let's start with what I hope that the hospital means to the community, and then I would like to think through, how the community, what the community can do, and in its own health and wellness efforts. The hospital serves the community first based on what the community needs are, right? And so what we constantly do is try to make sure we understand where the issues are in the schools, in the businesses, and in the community. And so if we listen well, then we build programs around those needs. And some examples of that are through our community benefit programs and through our clinical programs. So to be very specific, in community benefit, we know that in the schools, nurses are critical and valuable to understanding not only the health of the child, but of their family. So we fund school nurses, Campbell and the Cambrian School District in Cupertino. We fund mental health counselors to do the same. We fund programs in the school to make sure that there's reduced bullying, and we have a Playworks program on the playground that really helps reduce bullying. We do things like Roadrunners, where we provide transportation to people who are isolated and not able to get not only to a health care appointment, but also to activities of daily living like grocery shopping. Just recently, we partnered with Cupertino and Los Gatos school districts and the County Board of Supervisors and the cities to bring CPR training and into the schools. We just did one at Blossom Hill as an example, where we taught youth to do CPR. We just partnered with them on the same program where we actually placed, they're called AEDs, automatic external defibrillators, and putting them around businesses because that's important when someone has maybe a cardiac arrest or something like that. So we look for ways to respond to community needs, and then we participate. We actually, maybe people don't know this as much, we are the largest funder for grants and programs in the Silicon Valley, more so than any other healthcare institution.
You have been in the administrative side for 25 years.
Yeah.
Right out of high school.
Yeah, grade school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we were talking about your background in a couple minutes, but tell me how that's changed. I mean, there was a time not that long ago where the hospital was there,
Yeah.
and you come to us, and there was very little, if any, reaching out.
That's fair. That's fair. I started my work in public hospital many years ago, in Riverside County, and was there for 10 years, and it was the most wonderful foundation. We really did care for the most disenfranchised and the most vulnerable in Riverside County. And I would say there that even though the hospital was very hospital-centric, like you're suggesting, because of the population we served, we were really intertwined with the community because their problems were our problems. When they came to us, they didn't come to us with pneumonia. They came to us with all their social issues, their family issues. They didn't have stable housing. They didn't have healthy food. They didn't have access. So quite honestly, in the public milieu, I do believe that public hospitals have always served just an incredible role and mission.
More of a wellness outlet.
Well, more of a social and health wellness. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we really did try to take care of the whole family. But I think to your point, what you're really making is that what we've migrated from being very hospital-centric, where you just go to the hospital to be an inpatient, I mean, it's become very different. Actually, I think in a good way. So with the Affordable Care Act as an example, now we're required to really care for patients much more beyond their hospital stay. So 90 days. So like now, I have to really manage patients' care, not only in the hospital, but understand, gee, how long are they in that skilled nursing facility? Did we really provide them home health appropriately at home? How are they doing 90 days post-hospital stay? And then further, all these community things that I'm talking about, we're so involved in community activities, frontline work that people are doing to help people in the community. So it's been very different.
Your patients are like my jazz donors. They're they don't know maybe they're a patient yet, but someday they're certainly
We're all,
potentially one, and we're the same.
we're all temporarily
Yeah.
able, right? So we will all be patient.
Let me get my self-serving part out of the way. Thank you. You're a big supporter of Jazz in
Oh,
the Class.
absolutely.
And we
Pleasure.
love you for that, and we appreciate
Always
it, and you'll be with
pleasure.
us again next year.
Absolutely.
That having been said, tell me, are you a Southern California girl?
Oh, I was raised in the military, actually, Army family. So
Oh,
we were-
so you went
yeah,
to
I went to high
19
school in
schools and
Germany,
stuff?
yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Born on a base?
Actually, I was, yeah.
Really? Where?
In Virginia, Fort Lee,
Fort Lee.
Virginia, and then went off to France, and then just kind of moved around a bunch as a child. Went to school first at University of North Dakota, which you may not know, and then
Well,
ended
that's
up,
quite a cultural shock. University of North Dakota in France.
yeah, that too, but also to California, quite honestly.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, anyway.
Did you like North Dakota?
I love North
That's big
Dakota.
sky
I
country, although
revere.
it's next to big
I have
sky.
a lot of reverence for the people in North
Yeah.
Dakota, Minnesota. Really good people,
Yeah.
good lifestyle, but I did do most of my adult career, to your point, in
Yeah.
California.
And you were in
West
Minnesota
Coast.
for a while as well.
I was,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, yeah,
That
I
would be
was,
as easy as pie.
Yeah, you betcha.
You betcha, you betcha. When you got in, so your major, did you
Yeah.
have, when you got to school, did you say, this is what I want to do, or was medicine an interest as well? Did you think about becoming a doctor or anything?
Yeah, I wish. I mean, I was clueless, quite honestly. To be truthful, I was clueless, and so I really didn't know as an
Yeah.
undergraduate what I wanted to do. So I actually started out in tech, quite honestly, and with Control Data, a company that many know from back in the day, and in marketing, which I didn't do well at and didn't enjoy. And so really in my 30s is when I shifted gears and decided to pursue graduate work, and knew then that I wanted to kind of focus on an area that I had a lot of altruism at the time, and I really wanted to think about what's my life's work, because I knew that marketing hardware was not going to be it.
Right.
So I was looking for something that would really be value. I could contribute value. And my parents always raised us to serve others.
Was there,
That's what-
albeit perhaps slowly
Yeah.
evolved, but was there an epiphany that you looked around and said, you know how this could be done better?
Once I got into healthcare, much later, you mean, or you mean early on?
As you got into healthcare later, and you took a look at it and said, you know, I can bring something to the table that I don't see being served.
Yeah, I mean, I think the luxury of having been in the work for so long, it brings a certain maturity and a certain kind of cockiness to kind
Sure.
of take on really complex things and knowing you're not going to have the answer, but that through others, really, and surrounding yourself by really good people, you just take on complex problems because no one else will. And you can't wait for the federal or state government to do it. So quite honestly, I'm very energized by the healthcare is really, really complex. And so I do believe there's always, first of all, incremental improvement that we make. We do it locally. I think important. I really believe in community, taking care of our own region and its own wellness and tackling our own problems because no one else will. So yeah, I mean, I think with the experience I've had, I think you build confidence a little bit in saying, you know what, someone has to step in and really address some of these very, very difficult
Is it always a process of keeping your eyes on the prize, even though you'll be running the government, maybe there'd be a major change with what the government, with what the country's gone through the last couple of years that may affect you and may change the way you have to respond to operations?
There's no question you have to always scan the government, the federal and state laws, the direction, the trends, the requirements and the regulations. You have to know the guardrails within which you operate. But you can never lose sight of what's happening in your own community.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you can't let all of those get in the way of the work you need to do, whether or not it's trying to reduce isolation for seniors, whether or not it's the fact that our youth are committing suicide all too often, whether or not it's the mental health issues for seniors as well as employees in the workforce in Silicon Valley. So yeah, you always have to keep your eye on the federal, and you have to make sure that whatever you devise or divine, it has to be in the context of the broader picture.
Now, when did Mountain View open?
Over now 55 years ago.
55 years.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure people say this to
And
you all
Los
the time,
Gatos
but my
has been
children
the
were
same.
born in Mountain View. You might remember them. They were
I-
really little, no hair.
Yeah, I'm sure. Actually, I feel like I've been in healthcare that long, so I'm sure that I was probably touring the ward that day. Or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
from
yeah,
Dakota,
yeah,
do you
yeah.
know? And Los Gatos is 10, 12
Over-
years?
No. We acquired Los Gatos
Okay.
now it's around now 7 years ago
7
or
years,
so.
okay. How, and you were obviously instrumental in into that whole decision-making of picking up Los Gatos. Is it we've never done enough for our community, but we're in a position now that we're raising funds that it might be a great idea to reach out and get involved in other communities. Is that the mindset?
So I was not here when the decision was
Okay.
made. It was a very wise decision
Would you
by
have
the
made the
board.
decision?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was really the right decision. So, because I've only been in place for a little over 4 years.
Okay.
So the idea is that when you look regionally and you try to connect with communities, you have to be able to be in the community to understand what their needs are. And so for El Camino to actually have this, what I would say, North County, South County presence, and to be able to manage care across an enterprise is really important because you don't want to duplicate services,
Right.
but you want to have the right level of care at the right place at the right
Okay.
time. And so our immersion to the Los Gatos community has been just exceptional and extraordinary. And the West Valley and trying to understand the West Valley and beyond and further east, how we can play a role in some of the problems that I just mentioned is just, we're very, very committed to that.
There, philosophically, I'm sure the same commitment and mission statement applies to both hospitals, but is it a different kettle of fish down here to an extent?
I would say the community issues are very similar.
Okay.
So if you go from a community lens, very similar with respect to having needs around mental health or behavioral health, having needs around women's health and men's health. Are the programs different? Yes, but not all. So I'll give you a specific example. We have an acute rehab program in Los Gatos that we don't repeat, of course, in Mountain View because we draw regionally.
Yeah.
We have a comprehensive men's health program in Los Gatos that we don't need to repeat because people come regionally to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have certain unique programs that are unique to each site, but we also then provide excellent emergency care at both sites, and we both have very good women's health programs at both sites.
We take a quick break. You are watching Talk of the Town. Our guest, Tomi Ryba from Los Gatos Hospital and El Camino Hospital, the CEO and president, and that's because the title of Supreme Allied Commander had already been taken. We'll be back to
Yeah.
Talk of the Town in just a second.
Hi, I'm Steve Mariucci with the NFL Network, and you're watching KCAT Television.
And welcome back to Talk of the Town. We are with Tomi Ryba, the CEO and president of El Camino Hospital. We opened, Tomi, talking about the hospital's role in the community, but it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
What's the community's role in the hospital in this operation?
It's a good question. I think there's
It's about time. We've been here 20
yeah,
minutes.
it's about time you got to it, Mike. No, just
My,
kidding.
finally, my good question.
Now you have your quota. So I think when I think of community, I think of individuals and families, and I think of the broader. So I would start with individuals. So the single biggest barrier to staying well is behavior. Some of it's genetic. I don't want to dismiss genetics and that we might be predisposed to certain things, and diseases and conditions.
Having big bones, I know this.
Yes. And so what are you predisposed to?
That's right.
I got you. But my point, so behavior, right? So it's owning your own risks and knowing what they are. So I would just advise, people first should know what their risks are. What is your
Exactly in that order,
hereditary-
owning, knowing, and then owning.
Yeah,
and
you're
that's
right.
sort of,
You're right. Knowing first, right?
Yeah.
So seeking that out, knowing what your genetics are, what you're predisposed to, and then taking ownership
Yeah.
of what you learn and figure out, gee, how do I then mitigate my own risks? Because the toughest thing is behavior modification. It just is. Whether, folks sometimes, they, unfortunately, because their mom and dad had diabetes or their aunt had diabetes, they just think, okay, I'm going to have diabetes.
Okay.
But yet they could be so proactive and going, I could actually maybe do it differently. I'm going to do certain things to either prevent or reduce the risk of
right.
getting
Or
the
I'm
same.
going to assume it skips a generation and not worry about it at all.
Yeah, that's the worry, right?
Yeah.
So I think individuals owe it to themselves to look themselves in the mirror and say, who do I want to be as a well person? And, what am I going to do about it? And stop blaming others and
Right.
say, families.
And the perk from that is it also affects healthcare costs by being proactive.
Absolutely, their own cost, but
Yeah.
also the society costs.
Sure.
But families too, I think, I'll just say parents just have a huge influence and responsibility with their children and their extended families to kind of carry on that conversation and just to call it what it is. If you're seeing people having Coke every week or every day, We have this program for children that I think is actually good for adults. It's called 5210. You should have 5 fruits or vegetables every day, which I don't, I will admit. But you should have less than 2 hours of screen time.
Oh,
You should have 1 hour of physical activity and 0 sweetened beverages. And I think adults should abide by that. We put it in the schools.
absolutely.
But if families could really try to model that, it's about modeling the way for your children at early ages so they get these good habits.
Well, you know, it's interesting, and again, when I was growing up, it was hospitals were, you know, the gated community on the
Yeah,
hill. That,
yeah.
if you break your leg, come here.
Right.
Now it's, you know, maybe you don't want to ride that skateboard that way, and you won't break your leg. So there is, there's a reaching out, and
Yeah.
so there's an education. Before,
Right.
there really
You're right.
wasn't
Yeah.
an education.
That's
It was just an asset in town.
No, you're exactly right. And so the way that we've placed ourselves in schools and such and with the employers is to do just that, prevention and wellness. And then from a community standpoint, communities need to own who's in the community. What are do we have healthy food and is it accessible? Who are our isolated seniors? Do we really know who they are? Do we know who's suffering in silence behind, you know, the doors of these homes? And quite honestly, when you do all these audits and you do these studies every couple of years, you know, that we do with the county on population, it never gets that personal. And that's what communities can do better, is they can get more personalized with their neighbors. What are the needs? How do we own those? How do we at the city council and the chamber and all of those really, really know how many isolated seniors do we have? What do we do to socialize them? How do we sit there with them and make sure their homes are safe and make sure that they are safe?
You know,
things like that.
what's marvelous about you, and I'm so glad we're friends, is because the statement you just made could easily have been, here's what we're doing about appointment times, making them shorter.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah, we
that's
could- we
fine.
could do that
It doesn't
too.
mean that's wrong.
We
But
could do it too.
the point is, to make that statement, that's unique to the community, and that's special.
Yeah, you gotta have, I think you have to know your personality and know your risks in your own community. I'll say too, in the employers, they're really struggling with the stress, anxiety, and depression of their workforce.
Sure.
So they're part of the community. So what are we doing to mitigate some of that as well? And sleeplessness, I mean, all of these things that are going on in our own backyards and with our neighbors, we need to figure out ways, what role we can play to support.
Again, relating to my youth and the generation before
Uh-huh.
me, there was an attitude of, oh, don't bother the doctor, or I don't want to bother the
Yeah,
hospital.
yeah.
Accessibility is a whole new world.
It really is. So
Although I don't think people realize it.
I think that's true. I mean, it also takes you to have the
Sure.
conviction to step up, and
Yeah.
people have to now pick up the phone, or not
Yeah.
actually pick up the phone, but go online.
Yeah.
So healthcare is much more and more accessible, and physicians, they have to now try to manage that, because now all of a sudden they are more available, right? They can get their emails, they can get more phone calls, I mean, all of that. And so our world's a little bit different, and how can we be really responsive? Because now people can call me every which way. But the point is you want to have access, and it doesn't have to always be a doctor. I think we need to change our
That's an
mindsets,
excellent point,
right?
yeah.
It can be a nurse, a nurse practitioner, it can
Therapist,
be a
yeah.
psychologist, it can be, so we have to think of the different people who can really be the most helpful at the right time.
You mentioned in Riverside it was a public hospital. You're a private hospital?
We are.
Okay,
Not
and-
for- I mean, we're a district. We're not private. So we're a district hospital.
Okay,
El
for
Camino
people that
Hospital.
understand,
So district-
I'm representing them.
No,
What does that
understand.
mean?
So a district hospital has a governance whereby they have elected members of the district
Okay.
board, and we're nonprofit hospitals, not private. But so, as a district board, they have, as a special district, two responsibilities to the residents they serve within the district. Nevertheless, we serve people from broad geography. Right now, the governance of El Camino Hospital is that in addition to the elected officials who represent the district board, they have actually then appointed a hospital board specific to the hospital operations and really making sure the hospital is meeting its mission and really meeting the needs of the community. So the hospital board is made up of the 5 district board members, again, remember, who were elected by their constituents. And in
Okay.
addition, now we've added 3, I sit on the board as well, but 3 other, what I would call experts in healthcare to that complement. So you have really now a nice blend of community leaders plus experts in the healthcare field that govern.
What was the toughest part of your job?
Trying to look out 5 years and not knowing all the answers. We try to plan 2 and
Or
3 years.
particularly knowing there'll be all new answers. I mean, you're in a field where
fair.
you can't.
Yeah, that's fair. And try to anticipate and
Yeah.
not get too pigeonholed so you don't have
Yeah.
the flexibility
Yeah.
for whatever's to come at you. So the hardest part is with the Affordable Care Act is we don't know enough yet. So you have newly insured people, right? You have 38 million people in California. In 20 months or so, 1 out of every 3 Californians will be on Medi-Cal.
Oh, really?
It's huge. It's huge. So if 38 million people, you have 12 or 13 million Medi-Cal.
Yeah.
You have 7 or to 9 growing Medicare, and then you have insured adults or children or families in the middle. So who's going to take care of all these newly insured folks? You know, I worry about physicians and about what they can afford to take care of and what they want to take care of, right? Because they have to also know that Medicare reimbursement is low. Medi-Cal, the state of California, receives the next to the lowest Medi-Cal reimbursement in the country, where the population is growing exponentially. So you have all these confounding factors coming together and they're converging. And so what we don't know yet is, I'll give you one symptom. Our emergency rooms across the country, the volumes have increased over the last couple of years. That's good news, bad news. Good news is that people are becoming insured and they're accessing care, but they're not getting primary care, right?
Yeah.
They're going into the ER,
Yeah.
which is not primary care.
Yeah.
So my worry is how do we get a physicians that
It's like
can
I'll
actually...
eat when I'm starving to death.
Yeah, and that's a cost to society,
Yeah.
and it's not the right place for them.
Do you, like the University of Alabama football team, which is a powerhouse but always has to recruit in order to stay
Yeah.
a powerhouse,
Yeah.
is it a constant recruiting of great medical
You bet,
personnel? I mean,
no question.
you essentially draft doctors, I was
Yeah.
saying, like a
Absolutely.
football analogy.
And imagine University of Alabama having to compete against Stanford to
Yeah,
recruit.
exactly. Sure, sure.
So we sit in very competitive, you know, Silicon Valley, you've got Kaiser
Yeah.
and Stanford and Palo Alto Medical Foundation, all trying to bring the best talent,
Yeah.
physician talent, to the market, and we as well. So it's
And with these low
increasingly
property
tougher.
prices, it's got to be easy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the harder part too. But for our staff, aside from physicians, so physicians, it's incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
For our staff, the good news is when people come to El Camino, they stay.
Yeah.
Our turnover rate is like 2%. I mean, they just
Which
love-
speaks volumes.
it does. I mean, they're just, first of all, they're just really, really good people.
Yeah.
So devoted and committed to the safety and the quality of the patient care. There's just an incredible heart of El Camino Hospital.
I'm going to guess part of this next answer of what you're most proud of is your staff.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
all your staff.
Well, it was the biggest delight. You know, I've been over there 4 years, like I said, and you never know when you come to an organization, you don't know enough about the culture. You might know about their reputation, their quality outcomes, which were all stellar, but I didn't know the people. And so that's really been the biggest wonderful surprise, is getting to know the talent. Unbelievable.
You talk about the 5-year plan and how tough it is. Do you have a bucket list, if you will, of the things you'd like to see, directions perhaps the hospital to go?
Yeah. I have these dreams a little
Sure.
bit, but they aren't necessarily talking about profit. So I'll just tell you some
Sure.
of those. It really is talking about, you know, I'll give you an example. So what if everybody in the community had an advance directive? And you may not know what that means.
I
but,
don't.
Okay, so an advance directive is really having taken the time to think through what are your life's wishes at the end of life. And a lot of us haven't. I mean, it's uncomfortable to talk about for a lot of us, but you know, if everyone kind of had that conversation, not only with their family but their parents, and really thought about at the end of life, you know,
Yeah.
what do I want at the end of life, and not necessarily what we as physicians or as clinicians think you should have. There's a great book by Atul Gawande called Being Mortal, and it really does it transforms your thinking about what should we do around end of life and what our own wishes are. So that would be one thing that I just think about. Now I know it's not maybe what you thought about, you know, something really
no,
visionary
no.
around where El Camino should be, but I'm just saying that's a
No,
great
in fact, it is
community.
something that I've thought about, and as I age, I
Yeah.
realize more and more
Sure.
that getting old is getting old.
Yeah.
But the idea that even though maybe as you age you do some things better, you're still slowing down, and your trip to the big house is speeding up. So it's something you do need to
You do,
address.
and you need to
that's
have those-
okay.
yeah.
That's the game.
It's life,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
it's good to have those conversations with your family or loved ones
Yeah,
or friends
absolutely.
or whatever, just to kind of get it going. But for El Camino, my dream or bucket list would be that I really want to continue to be viewed as accessible, very humanistic and personalized care, expert outcomes, because we do have the best talent for physicians and staff. But also to think of it as a solution for the region, you know, and how we differentiate ourselves from a Stanford or a Kaiser, and making sure that we take care of the family needs. The other thing is if I just don't want to be able to afford to do all that community work that I've talked about, because I
Yeah.
think it distinguishes us from others in
Absolutely.
the market, that we're actually really engaged. When I came, I asked each member of our executive leadership team to serve on a local board, and we've done that, because I think it's just really important that we represent the hospital, but we represent ourselves and these community needs. So we've got great work to do. I look
Yeah.
forward to it.
Well, and I know Jazz, the docs come up on stage.
Yeah.
And I love these guys because they're all hams. I say, do 30 seconds, and 4 minutes later they're going,
Oh,
who's into cardio? Yeah, okay. So, yeah. Hey, I know you.
Fair,
But,
fair,
but wonderful folks.
Yeah.
And again, it's interesting because you see these people, and when I deal with them at the concerts, they come out and there's a certain delight in being among the masses that they don't get.
Yeah.
They're in the office, they're in the operating room, but here I'm out with the folks, and
But
that's
didn't
nice.
you find them very approachable? too?
Absolutely. No,
So they're
no,
very
that's what I said.
relatable,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're saying.
And it's so very important to me to put a face on,
personally.
that's why I'm glad
You're
you're
right.
here.
Me
And
too.
I have
Thank
these
you.
pictures I will send
Yeah,
out
now
to
you'll
everybody at
remind-
home, so you'll recognize them
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
see here. So you're happy, that's neat.
Yeah, no,
That's neat.
it's a privilege, it's good work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think too, well, I think we're privileged as well to have you here,
not at
but that, the synchronicity of you feeling privileged to be here makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, pleasure.
Good to see you. I will
Always
see
to
you
you
at
as well.
Jazz.
Yes, I will.
Let's do this again. I
Okay.
know earlier in the series we've had some docs on.
Okay.
I want to get some more on. And,
Great. Be glad to
So
help.
talk about that and share the health as only you guys can.
Okay, thank you so
Tomi
much.
Ryba,
Thanks a lot. Thank
CEO
you.
and President of El Camino Hospital, the Hospital of Silicon Valley. That's Talk of the Town. Look forward to seeing you soon. Until we do, I'm Jacobi. Take care.